Hello everyone, and thanks Nuno for inviting me to this great festival. I feel really honored to be here and hope you enjoy as much as I will during this presentation. Have you ever wondered how the music came into your life? For the ones that write music, is there a great argument for the elements that come to your mind? Do you know where they come from? And how does that seem to reach the mind of your audience? Music can really reach hidden parts of the brain you didn't know existed. It even has the power to change the world. The goal of this presentation is to give a psychodynamic perspective of the power of the music in both the composer and the audience, through an example of the inspiration that came to Sir Paul McCartney in a dream that led him to compose what came to be one of the most important musical pieces of the Beatles, Let It Be. The psychodynamic theory is a psychological perspective that emphasizes the psychological forces that drain our behavior, feelings, and emotions in a constant and dynamic relation between the conscious and unconscious mind. That initiates from the early childhood or even in utero through the relation between the child and the world. The early developmental phases of the child are fundamental in designing and mapping the neural circuits of the brain, especially those regarding basic functions, as some regulatory functions like sleep-awake cycle, gastrointestinal function, but also, and very important, the regulation of emotions. Of course, these are influenced by a lot of genetic factors. The psychodynamic theory believes that the baby that comes into the world regulates itself through what is called the mother figure, the one who provides the essentials to surviving. Despite being called that, it can be represented by elements of any kind or even by several elements, human and non-human forms. Traditionally, the baby has a mother figure with which he merges in the first moments of life that feeds, rocks, hums, and comfort. The baby's gaze at birth does not reach more than 20 centimeters, the distance needed to see the face of the mother while breastfeeding, or any other human bottle feeding. Sensations, the touch of skin to skin, smells, and sounds regulates their well-being. This is the importance of maternal attachment in the first 6 months of life. It is believed that many adult behaviors can be explained through these early memories of the childhood. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we are not able to remind these early events. This information is somewhat hidden from us. So can be traumatic or shameful events. They are hidden for the sake of our mental well-being in some sort of archive in the deepness of the mind that we call the unconscious mind. Here, as you can see in this figure, the conscious mind is represented by the tip of the iceberg as evocable memory, something that can be perceived or seen. The unconscious mind is below the line of the sea, so they cannot be reached by our conscious mind. They are hidden. And not only hidden, but also protected. To understand this, we have to imagine a more or less permeable protective sheet, like this line, that covers and separates repressed memories from evocable memories. This process of sorting out what is below the sheet is called the repression mechanism. It is believed that this theory might explain and cure pathological behavior or emotions using hidden memories that can escape through the pores of the sheet. The basis of psychodynamic psychotherapy is to bring to light the consciousness the hidden contents of the mind that represents an internal conflict or unresolved problem like traumatic or shameful events, enabling its elaboration. By elaborating these contents, the internal conflict resolves. One of the means to do so is to analyze dreams. The contents and the story of the dream that can seem somewhat bizarre are believed to be elements that escape from the unconscious mind to the upper levels. Freud called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. It does absolutely not seem to be a form of communication with the supernatural world. It is seen as a psychic event, a very particular type of thinking that happens during sleep and that depends on the dreamer itself. It has a specific language that is symbolic and obeys a very own code that encrypts the content. It is not easy to analyze a dream, believe me, though there are typical examples of dream stories like falling, the fear of falling, opening doors, escape, loss of objects or people, the alarm clock ringing. So we were in the late 60s, it was 1968, the world was literally on fire. There was a lot going on and people were very rebellious and angry. For the Beatles, who went on a journey through India, it was a time of a lot of discovery and spiritualism. The Beatles brought meditation to light to the rest of the world, and the idea that reality is inside the person, in their inner world, just like the psychodynamic theory says. It was also a very prolific period in terms of creativeness and productivity for the band. Sir Paul McCartney would meditate, take psychedelic drugs, and have vivid dreams that would inspire his work. Many songs were composed by him using elements of these experiences that usually opens access to the unconscious mind. Later, the band went through a more troubled phase where sex, drugs, and rock and roll were too involved in the dynamics of the group. Paul McCartney himself assumed that at some point he felt pretty tired and pretty wasted. Also, the group was starting to have personal issues among each member. They were somehow distant from each other, starting to follow divergent paths. The end was near, and Paul couldn't handle it quite well. He was not accepting it. He was suffering. And he tells the story that one day he went to bed and had a restless night. He had this dream where his mother, whose name was Mary, who had passed away for about 10 years at that point, came to him, and it was as if she could see that he was troubled. She told him, "Let it be. It's going to be okay. Don't worry too much. It will turn out okay." He woke up and immediately wrote not the dream, but the song, using the feeling he experienced in the dream. He remembers her voice, the meaning of the message, and above all, the affection of the mother figure that provides help, advice, support, and what it represented to him. The solace, the comfort he felt as a young man when his mother came home from work at the end of the day. Sir Paul lost his mother at the age of 14, at a time when it would have been of great anguish and helplessness for him. This loss, this anguish, the grief, was being experienced again by the imminent loss of the musical band, the Beatles, with which it identified as the core of its activity and source of satisfaction, and which would provide, as well as his mother, with what he would need to survive. In a way, at that time, he would be about to relieve the feeling of his mother's loss. However, he was saved by the dream of his mother, who visits him before his eyes and speaks to him, whispering words of wisdom. The author interpreted the message as a message of comfort in the figure of the mother, who looked at him from the front and comforted him with her voice. These are probably affections acquired as a baby, looking the mother in the face and listening to her voice and the rocking of her arms. This type of music is in the form of a ballad, which can also assemble the rocking of the baby and forwards to sentimental content. He was not only dreaming about his mother, but also about the band. McCartney in his dream would be rediscovering his spiritual and creative path, but he would also be contributing to the foreseeable end Let it be can be an affirmation of himself in accepting the loss, realizing that there will be an answer, and experiencing the mourning of the end of the band and simultaneously of his mother. In a way, the dream also allowed us to realize that the loss is not total, as the reunion with the lost mother was achieved, demonstrating that it is possible to hold the lost loved one with oneself, as he did in his mind. To the listener of this ballad, emotions and associations linked to previous experiences similar to those of the author can be stimulated. In that way, music can function as a repairer of negative affections. What do you feel when you listen to this music and sing the lyrics? What would you feel if you were in the 1970s? On the other hand, in a process of identification with a mother figure, the author also intends to be, for his listeners and perhaps even for the other elements of the band, the people and society he saw as living in troubled times, an image of a caregiver, the voice and music that calms down the subjects, reaching the collective psyche in the same way that his psyche was affected through the sharing of his work. The band broke up shortly after the song's release in 1970. Let It Be turned out to be a great advice. Relatively to odds, the aim of the creator will be to satisfy an unconscious fantasy through the act of artistic creation, resorting to creativity and imagination, sometimes to the contents of a dream, and therefore transforming an internal conflict into something useful. So for all of that explained, I would like to finish keeping in your mind that it is very important for us to listen to somebody's music, to listen to one another, to learn to give something of our own, and to know to receive one's work as a gift that allows us to internally grow as both rational and emotional beings. Hope you enjoyed, and thank you for listening.